Okay, so I'm going to get started. There's another talk at 11:30, so I'm going to try very hard not to go into their talk, which would be a first for me, to stick to the schedule here. So I first want to thank you all for coming. I see lots of people that are here supporting me, and new people and people that have driven into here what the encaustic arts and the processes are about. And I'm Lonnie Zarem, and today I really want to talk about, what are encaustic arts, a little bit about the history, a bit about a couple different processes that you typically see and sort of differentiate the kind of process that I'm doing that you'll see over there in the exhibit today. And then I want to talk about what inspired me in this series and walk through the different pieces of art that you'll see in my exhibit and kind of let you know what I was thinking and what I was trying to do and all the fun I was having, actually. This is one of my favorite exhibits. I probably was, kind of in love with the Truckee, and every piece I did was a work of labor of love. So this is a fun one for me to share with you all. So a little bit about me to start. I'm a professional artist. I've been working as an oil painter, and then later, maybe the last 18 years in encaustic arts. So better part of 20 years. I have a studio in Crystal Bay where I'm working now, and I am typically, you would probably think of me as an abstract or an expressionist artist. I typically work toggle expressionism, abstraction, and then something more representative, because I really like things to be recognizable so people and me can really connect to the work. So you'll see that in my exhibit, how it goes. Some are more abstract and some are a little bit, more representational. The things that really motivate me are to be out in nature, to really observe what's around me, to really capture those ephemeral moments that sort of come and go, but have a lot of meaning to me, whether it's their beauty, whether it's a contrast, whether it's a transition in season, or remembering what it feels like to have icy water splash on me as I'm flying down the river in the rapids. I want to capture those moments, and I want to make them, real and shareable to other people. And I want to do it in the simplest and most honest way that I can. So what you see, and you'll see in my exhibit today, is the closest that I can get to my feelings about the moment and what has come out of my fingers through wax on rice paper. So that's sort of how I do it. I am one of those kind of artists that once I feel the moment or I'm in the moment, I sort of get pictures in my mind, just full, complete pictures, and then sort of deconstruct those and then work my way into the piece. So that's a little bit about me. I show my work professionally. I teach. I am an international mentor for a global encaustic arts program, which I'm very proud of, to teach people how to use this medium in these ways. So that's just a little bit about me to start this. So, okay. So, first of all, what are encaustic arts? They are basically refer to the medium, which is wax, a little bit of resin, and pigment. And in the ancient times, this really started in ancient Greece. The waxes were probably made from more animal fats. The resins were a lot of saps from the trees, and they were used in shipbuilding. So the wax, the resin, and later pigments were added to the wax and the resin, are combined with heat or fire. Encausticos is actually a Greek word that means burn it, or burn it in, or burn in the color. And this is where it all started. It was used in shipbuilding primarily to fix the ships and put them together, and later, as pigment was added, they used that more decoratively on the ships. And then eventually this worked its way through sculpture. It was used in sculptures. It was used largely in portraits for funerary, I don't know if I say that right, panels that covered mummies. And these are pictures here of some of the most famous ones that we have now still, and they were from the Fayum mummy collection in during the 1st and 3rd century AD, and you see how well the colors are preserved here in the resin and the wax. But after this time, tempera painting, oil painting became more popular. This was very laborious work to go out, you can imagine, to go out and find the wood or the hard surface, to go out and make the wax, to go out and get the sap from the trees, to burn it, and you can only imagine how toxic all of that was at the time, not really knowing what they were working with. So that kind of fell away until about the 20th century, and it was kicked off by Jasper Johns, who's a very famous artist. He did this flag here in about 1954. He was one of the artists, New York artists, that was very experimental. After post-World War II, we had the whole abstract expressionist movement in New York, where artists were poor, so they were picking up anything off the street, found old paints, anything they could think of, to put their work together. But they were also experimenting and trying to find something that was, more expressive, more from the inside. And Jasper John decided to go back to some of these ancient materials or ancient processes, and he did this flag, which is very difficult. It's many layers of wax, and he even added some paper to it. And this was one of the first things that people saw that was encaustic wax in the 1950s. We also, which has changed quite a bit in more contemporary times, and I'll talk about that, we now have sculpture. We have artists that are building up wax, encaustic wax, on sculptures and on just about anything, on any hard surface. And then we have over here this wild one, which I can't believe I put up there, but I do like it. And this one's on paper. This is an encaustic monotype, and this is a very different process with encaustic wax, where you are basically creating a print that's embedded and pulled off on rice paper. So that's a very different process. So what's happened since 1954 is this has become a very popular medium because you can embed things in it, which makes it a very crafty kind of approach. You can paint many layers, you can dig into it. Many things have changed. We figured out what is toxic, what isn't, and manufacturers have put together these nice blocks of wax that are mostly beeswax, although there's soy wax and other waxes, but mostly beeswax. They put the resin in it, small amounts of resin. We finally figured out which are the least toxic. What do we have to put the resin in for is primarily to raise the melting point, so that when they're put on boards and they're hanging in your house and it's 85 degrees, they don't melt off the surface. So we have to put a little bit of resin in there. Less so with mine, but more with the paintings that you'll see and I'll talk about. And then manufacturers. So once we figured out some of these things, there became more manufacturers. They started showing up in art stores. The number of artists just ballooned, not only in the small artistic towns like Santa Fe and then in the East Coast and now on the West Coast, but this is really a global movement, and you'll find encaustic work in museums, in galleries, and it is now widely collected because artists have figured out how to make it more durable. Manufacturers make better materials. Nobody, you know, the management of them is very healthy and well known, and so things have moved along quite well. In fact, in this show alone, you'll see a lot of different encaustic artists, mostly painters, and then you'll see mine, which is Encaustic Monotype. So I want to differentiate between those a little bit. Okay. So the first one I want to talk about is encaustic painting. And this is an example of a woman who works in her studio that I know well. Typically, encaustic painting means that you melt the wax in a vat or something, and you're applying that wax with a paintbrush. Or other materials. I mean, you know, artists throw in every kind of tool you can imagine. But in the purest sense, you're putting it in on a hard surface. You see the hard surface she's working with a lot of different paint brushes. There are a lot of tools involved. There's heat involved in that. She's got this on a hot plate, and she's got the wax, a clear wax melted right there that she's using. And then down in the lower picture, you see she's adding paper and she's adding collage materials, because you can layer up this wax. As you layer the wax, I say you have to, you get to torch it, which is just lots of fun. And I've taught a number of classes where, you know, I've got 10 people with torches and everybody's layering wax, and it's a very fun day. I have to go around and tie everybody's hair back because nobody thinks about it, but you know, it can be fun. So encaustic artists love to have, painters love to have shows that are, you know, wax and fire, fire and fire. I mean, it's just fun. So, and it is fun. But it is very laborious. You end up with pieces where you see many layers. You see all those little circles. She took a little razor blade and etched them out and then refilled them with hot wax. So now she's got this design that she's put in. So it's a very tactile, very laborious. It is many layers, many tools, a lot of fun, but a very different process than Encaustic Monotype. And this is what you'll see at the show. So I hope when you go by and you see them, you can really look and see some of the layers they put in there and ask them, you know, how they did it, because there's a lot involved. Okay. So then what is an encaustic monotype? And this is really the area that I settled into, even though I was doing painting for years, the encaustic painting for years. I settled into the encaustic monotype. So this is very different in that, first of all, it still is wax, resin, pigment, and heat. I don't use a torch. I use boxes that have heating elements in it that I can control. And on top of the boxes, I put a big aluminum, anodized aluminum plate. And that plate, I heat it up to about 175, 185 degrees. And I take those blocks of wax and I paint right on to that hot plate. It just melts like butter. It is so nice. And I create the entire image in molten wax on that plate. And once the image is finished, and that may mean many iterations. I may work for 4 or 5 hours on the plate because it's flat, it's consistent temperature, so I can work and work and work. I can take silicone tools and take it off if I don't like it. I can add more, but until I finish the image. When the image is finished, then I lay some kind of heavy-duty rice paper over the top of it. It totally absorbs the wax, the hot wax that's on the plate, and it absorbs it in 45 seconds, maybe. And once that's done, then I pull up the paper for a one-time encaustic monotype, a one-time print. And that's what you'll see in my exhibit. Everything up there is rice paper with that image pulled up on it, and that's what's hanging. So that's very different than using a hard surface, many layers, a torch. So hopefully that gives you some sense of the difference in those. Now, most people don't do encaustic monotype. They have small boxes, they have small plates. Anything you do has to be custom, because this is an area in the encaustic arts that hasn't taken off in the sense that many manufacturers supply the equipment. So everything you get is custom, or you have to make it happen, really. Okay. Okay, here's an example of me working in my studio. You see the paints in the bins in the back. This is one of my plates. This is a plate the size of what you'll see in my exhibit today. And I was laying out different colors to see what palette I wanted to put together for this show, and just finally said, that's it, it's unlimited palette, I like them all. So I just sort of didn't really stop with the colors, I kept on going. But that's an example of me working the aluminum plate. That's my heat source. Those are the pigmented encaustic medium in the sort of back and the bins. And then sometimes I go in, and you'll see this if you look closely at some of the work there, I go in with a pencil at the end, and while it's hot on the plate, I can draw right into the wax and actually give myself a little more structure. It's a bit of a dance between letting the wax flow. You can imagine you have one surface, everything melts together, and then recapturing a little bit of the structure there. So sometimes I go back with those materials, and you'll see some of that in the pieces that are on the wall there. Okay, so what inspired me to do this series? I'm usually against them because I don't like anything to look the same as the last one I did, and I want total freedom to change my mind and go upside down and do something completely different one day from the next. In spite of the encouragement of many gallery owners who said, please send us a series. So this is my first true bona fide series, and I'm very excited about it. In fact, I feel like I could do many more of them. And why really? Because of things like the beauty of the memories that I've heard from so many people and my own along the Truckee, the way it draws communities together. After moving here permanently a year and a half ago, and visiting the Truckee more often, even though I have been coming to the Truckee for years and years, I really started seeing the community that is around the river and how much a part of life it is for most people that live in Reno and Sparks, and even many people all the way through Tahoe. The stories are endless that I've read, and also the people that have come forward and told me stories, and people are coming into my space last night for the opening, and the minute they start looking at mine, they start telling me their stories of the Truckee. So also their stories of broken legs. I know a lot about people after last night, but I did hear a lot of stories about the Truckee. So I love the rough and the raging part of the Truckee. I like the part that makes you relax and reflect and just follow the flow and be in the moment and be out of whatever you are doing, even if you're just stopping off at the Hub Roasters, grabbing a cup of coffee, going across the street and taking a little walk. I like how it winds through remote stretches of the forest and then through the urban areas all the way up through the high desert at the end at Pyramid Lake. It's just incredible. The tributaries, the reservoirs, the lakes. It's just, 121 miles of interesting terrain and river. I love that for generations it has sustained people in terms of water and food, and has meant so much culturally and spiritually to the Washoe and Paiute people who have been stewards of of this land and large parts of the river and Pyramid Lake. Today, I like that people of all ages and all kinds of people show up at the river. They show up with their little tiny kids and put them in rock pools so that they don't float down the river. They picnics on the river, people fishing in the river. I like to fish in the river. You know, just so many things that you can do recreationally, but also just the utility that it provides the whole community. I think it offers a nice focal point for growth and reflection. I've heard it over and over again. And I think it provides something that people feel like is their own. It is their Truckee River. It's the one they grew up with, skip stones as boys. You know, I talked to a woman yesterday who jumps in the Truckee and swims every day against the current in the same spot, you know, and watches the fishermen. But people feel like it's our river, and that also is a calling, really, to being a personal steward to protecting it. And I think that's something everybody can agree on too. So I had so many reasons for doing this just outside of my own personal experiences that you will see in my exhibit. Okay. So I wanted to read you a couple of stories that people came forward to me with because I think it embodies what I'm talking about, really shares it. And one of them is from a friend who I reached out to get some quotes. I wanted quotes from people who had spent years on the river, and instead I got stories. So this is one of them. As a lifetime resident of, and this is from Willie Malini. As a lifetime resident of Reno, I have a very strong connection with the Truckee River. I grew up about 1.5 miles north of the river. The Truckee River has always had an influence on my life. As a young boy, 8, 9, and 10, I swam there. I fished there consistently around the old Booth Street Bridge. We hunted crawdads in the river. The river was a major source of pleasure for us as young boys. As I matured, grew up, went to college, went to work in the conservation community for the Department of Wildlife, I fully realized the tremendous value of that river as a lifeblood to the city of Reno and Pyramid Lake. It used to anger me that we dumped secondary treated sewage and other unacceptable materials into it. But in the last 15 to 20 years, the community has come around to recognize its value and is taking much better care of the river, which is now prospering. I was very involved in the episodes with the beavers, denuding the cottonwoods, willows, and aspens on the banks of the river. We convinced the community that those trees had to be fenced at the base in order to keep the beavers from killing the trees, warming the water, and disturbing the fish habitat. Anyway, the Truckee River is a unique and very important place, and I'm happy that we have, as a community, recognized and are now taking better care of it. So it's just a classic, it's, I think, a beautiful story of someone who grew up and also takes responsibility for it and gets involved. And it's not an uncommon story, which is the other reason I wanted to read it. And the second one is a bit of a love story, so why not? Why not have a little love story? So this one's called The Course of the River. And this was written by Karen Ross. The course of a river can change the course of a life. That night, strolling the banks of the Truckee, internal walls began to crumble. Stones around my heart shifted and drifted. Standing at the water's edge, experiencing the exhilaration of a new relationship, possibilities glimmered like moon shadows on the surface of the Truckee steady flow. First date. Conversation neither of us wanted to end, a walk along the river path bringing us to this place. Of beginning, of potential, never ending. Close your eyes, don't struggle, breathe deeply. Let the power of the Truckee carry you through bouncing rapids into the eddy. Relax into the place of calm, safety, and ease. What started on the banks of the Truckee gained momentum. Commitment to singlehood, individuality, our separate flow, changed course and power. Tributaries converged, seedlings deposited, and fertile riverbanks grew, intertwined and flourished. I say to the Truckee, thank you for your gift. From the images shimmering on your surface came a whole new way of seeing. We instead of me. Does a river have the power to heal and transform? Years later, I recollect that night with reverence and gratitude. I close my eyes and sense the coursing of the Truckee, ebbing and flowing into its own uncharted, infinite space. Will you let the river take you? It's just a beautiful story, and I can't tell you how many times I've been walking along the Truckee. There are kids, dogs, balloons, soccer balls, everything is flying. And there are two people up on rocks right on the edge of the river. The only thing they see is themselves and the flow of the Truckee. So I've seen it over and over, and these are kind of the stories that made me feel I was part of a community, worth noting. And I had to paint it and share it. So, okay. I also want to say I did a lot of research on this project and read a lot about the Washoe, Paiute people, and there are numerous stories that really discuss the importance of the basic sustenance for them, and the cultural and spiritual importance of the Truckee. And they're fascinating, they're interesting, as is the culture, the interpretation center at Pyramid Lake is very enlightening too. So. Okay, so what were my goals? Were really to create a visual collection of personal memories, capture the movement and the light and the color of the Truckee, invite people to slow down and connect and recount their own memories, not just see what I'm offering there, and call on people to remember that our river needs protecting. Okay. So I can't believe I'm showing this picture, but given that I'm in a wheelchair, it's looking good. I researched a lot of history of the Truckee, quite fascinating. We've probably messed with this river in terms of dams and bridges more than any other river in the country, it's said. I began to journal experiences on the Truckee, set out to go into new areas that I had never been, and I tried to cover most of the Truckee from beginning to end, or at least what was representational of most of those areas. And then focused on moments, ultimately, that express my feelings about the river, and that's what you'll see in my exhibit. Okay? So it starts here. These are my pieces. I've never seen them this big in my life. They are actually 32 by 66. And so it's overwhelming. I could see all the things I love and maybe a few things I missed. But it all starts here. This was the Fanny Bridge, very famous area. And what I wanted to capture was the beautiful sort of architecture of Fanny Bridge and a little bit of the sort of lore around it. Why Fanny Bridge, which is basically, the perspective is me looking at Fanny Bridge from the Truckee River side, and you would typically see people walking along the bridge that is, over the outflow, looking the other direction, into Lake Tahoe, and therefore seeing many fannies along the bridge on a given summer day is the thought. So I had to get that in. That was no piece of cake for me because architecture's wouldn't be one of the things that I would say is my forte. But what I did want to capture was the beauty of that water and also that consistency of the water coming through as the outflow. That has, this was finished in 1913, and is really the only outflow out of Tahoe. And as of the 2015 water agreements, this has a very steady flow. Whether the river's high, the river's low, it has a very steady flow that works its way through the Boca and Stampede reservoirs, where water is stored to make sure that the flow is adequate and as agreed on all the way through Pyramid Lake. No matter what the year looks like, water will be moving consistently through. So I wanted to capture that because it's beautiful. It really provides life all through the river, all the way to the end. And you know, I wanted to capture that that beauty and also that that contrast in the architecture and the water itself. Now, when I do these, I sort of put myself in the water because I like the water and I like to feel it and I like to feel the movement of it and I like to see the differences in depth, the color and the depth, and I want to see the different you know, the different rocks and things underneath. So that's what I tried to show in this with the movement. In truth, and what I didn't put in here is I've spent many hours at this bridge with my boys looking at the fish, which is not here, but it does make it a mesmerizing kind of place to be. So, okay. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, so this is the Truckee River churns, which is kind of a famous saying also about it. And here I really just wanted to capture the water in those rugged areas where, as a result of high flow, whether it's high flow from, you know, high flow release from Tahoe, high flow rains, high snow melt, or, you know, boulders and trees in the river, areas where you just get this intense churning. It's before the white water, but it's intense churning. It's so interesting. There's so many valleys. There's so many changes in depth. And I like to put myself in and kind of ride along in the slivers of the water and find the eddies and just be in it. And that is the state of mind when I am doing it. I am fully in the river. So a lot of people say to me, you know, how do you know when you're finished with a painting? And my answer is, it's really when I feel like I've been somewhere, when I've really been there, and I can take a look at my painting and go right back there. Then it's actually honest and authentic to my memory, and I feel done. So this is one of those that I just feel, I can almost feel it on my skin when I look at it. So, okay. All right. Well, one day walking in Mayberry Park, Hal and I were on a bridge and looked down and saw a mated pair of beaver. Huge. I was used to seeing river otters. They're actually quite large. They're together for life. And after that, we started walking along the riverbank there and we saw the beaver dam. We saw so much beaver sign where they had, you know, it almost looked like a cartoon, the trees that they had gnawed to a perfect point that were getting ready to fall, trees that had fallen, trees that were half dragged to the river. You could really see the beaver sign so strongly, which made me look into it. I needed to do the beaver dam after that, and I have to admit, I really got lost in that beaver dam. If there's anything I would love to do and imagine doing, it's just jumping in the water, swimming over there, and coming up right inside and seeing what's happening. Not advisable, but in my studio, I'm almost there. And that's what I was doing when I put this together. Had to remember to put the river in just to make sure we had a context. But it's interesting, after looking at this, around the 1800s, we actually didn't have many beavers in the rivers up in this area. And in the 1940s, there was a big push to relocate beavers in, you know, all of in these mountain rivers up here, to help restore habitat, especially in some of the dry areas and ecosystems in the dry areas of the river, which have been proven very successful. Unfortunately, they did so well, as is a story we hear often when we get involved. They did so well that in the 1980s, the beaver population just took off, and you can find them in many little tributaries, rivers, lakes around here now. And there's a problem with the trees. They are taking down the trees along the river. So as Willie mentioned, they finally now are putting up bans around a lot of the trees along the river. So if you go to Mayberry Park, for example, you'll see the metal netting around a lot of the trees to save them because we have such strong beaver populations. And I had no idea they get out, they walk up into people's yards, pick the apples. They're involved in the community now. Okay. So this one I call Winter Spaces. It's one of my sort of favorite memories of being in Reno is, as you know, when it snows, it doesn't stick very long, but it's quite beautiful. And right when you feel like you're in the middle of a black and white winter and it's just too cold to go outside, you get cozy, walk down to the river, and it's pretty stunning. You have the snow that sticks on every form and really outlines the boulders and outlines the surfaces and the trees and the branches, and then the sun is lighting up the branches and the rocks, and the water is shimmering. And if you sit there for a while, you start feeling like there is so much color there and so much wildness, and it's quiet and it's yours. It's your moment. And this happened many times, when I was there, and I would encourage anyone to do it because it really had a way of turning a black and white day into something quite beautiful. So, okay. So this one I call Big Water. I decided that I wanted to see some other areas on the Truckee that were hard to get to. Areas with big, beautiful granite, outcroppings into the river and big boulders and, beautiful forested areas. So I contacted a river rafting company, and they took us along for a ride one day, and in class 3, class 4 rapids, there are serious rapids on the Truckee in the spring, and you're in one for sure. So I wanted to capture really the chaos of it all, the chaos and the excitement of all. So to me, I felt like every sense was on fire. I mean, it was freezing water on my face and my feet, absolutely freezing. We were flying through there. You're going so fast, and you see the water splashing up, and you see the light reflecting off all these twists and turns in the water and everything flying through the air. And then right as you can't believe how fast you're going, you're getting soaked, you drop down, you really drop down behind some boulder, or you find some eddy, or you watch all the rest of the people go in the river, as the case was when we were there. But I just wanted to capture the chaos and the excitement of it all, and the lightness. And so again, I put myself in the river and rewrite it when I am in the process of making these paintings in my studio. So I hope you can feel that energy and that brightness of the day. Okay. So this one is rock ponds, and these are very interesting because they are all along the Truckee, from Tahoe City to Pyramid Lake, and probably for hundreds of years. These rock ponds are really part of river culture. And I first saw one when I was going there to scope out fishing spots, and there was a whole family there, getting ready to picnic, and a whole bunch of kids were down in the river by themselves in a rock pool. So people had kind of formed this pool so that little kids could play and have fun and be away from the current of the river. So I've seen fishermen stand in them, but a lot of kids and a lot of families really utilize these little beautiful rock ponds. So my son and I one day were stopping along a lot of different areas and just squeezed into what was considered a fisherman's access point and ran into one of these rock ponds. And it was so forested that everything looked green, except for the reflection of the sky that came through the top of the trees into this pond. The reflection was incredible, and most importantly, the color that I show here in this pond, this blue, was the color I was looking at on the Truckee. It was absolutely spectacular, and I just could not get over the color. And at risk of looking like this is just not at all what the Truckee looks like, I wanted to make sure you saw this reflection as it was, because it was as blue as this. Okay. So this one's Fisherman's Haven. To me, this is, all my years driving down the 80, looking at the Truckee on the right and all the different places that I thought would be great fishing areas or little pockets along there. I just had to capture that. The river is filled with fly fishermen in the morning. Just get up at 6 a.m., go out on the river, and you'll be shocked that there's no spot for you to walk in your waders. It is quite surprising. So I wanted to sort of, pay my homage to those fishermen and then also brag that my first trout in the Truckee was in the Boca Reservoir last year, and it was so exciting, so had to get this one in. Okay. So spring thistles on the Truckee. I sort of recalled this from the river rafting trip because I did it in early June, so we were still just getting those spring flowers, everywhere. And it was incredible. I could smell the wild roses from the river, up half the river. It was just really an incredible day. But then all of a sudden there was a calm area, and I looked up on the shore, and it was just neon pink. I couldn't even figure out what it was, and it was these thistles, and they're usually not around long, so you don't see them in their glory. It was just a lucky day on the Truckee, and so I wanted to get them, and they truly were about as neon as this. So I just wanted to get that as a last one. Okay. So this one's river fish. I never caught a fish that looked like this. These fish were created in my studio, but they are in celebration of my first great year of fly fishing in British Columbia, in Iceland, and then finally in our own favorite Boca Reservoir in Nevada. And to me, it's a celebration of what these fish look like underwater as they're moving quickly past your bait and you, but they are beautiful, and just the reflections of all of that life and swimming freely, and that's really what I was trying to capture here. Okay. And this is the last one I have. I did this one first, actually, in the series, and this was really from being in the area in Reno that I would frequent, and in the fall. I mean, there's just nothing like the fall along the Truckee and in Reno. It is, and this is true all through Tahoe. Fall is a very special time of year, but the contrasts in color with the river are just spectacular any time of day, and I wanted to start to capture that a little bit in my projects. So this is the last one of my series. Okay. So now here at the end of this, what's coming up next for me? So I do have some work in a show in New York, and then I also have some work that'll go into Sierra Arts Gallery in Reno in December. So for anyone who's interested, just if you pass by my booth and leave your email address, I can send you any information if you like it. Okay. All right. Also, I teach encaustic workshops. I'll be teaching in Nevada Fine Arts here in November, I think November 9th. And I also teach in the Bay Area, and I'm an international mentor for people learning Encaustic Monotype. Okay? And I wanted to say just something about International Encaustic Artists. This is an organization, a global organization, and probably did more to promote encaustic arts than any other organization in the world. And if you go to this website, for you, people that are selling it or installing it in their homes or want to know more about it, it's just a wealth of information. It lists some of the best encaustic artists in the world, and it really is a place where you can learn and be part of this whole encaustic art community. We are in the process of developing a chapter in Nevada for encaustic artists, so they have a place to come together, be, and learn. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, and I'm going to get myself together or have everybody else get me together, as the case may be, get over to my exhibit, and I hope to see you, and I can answer any other questions you might have. But thank you. Oh.